Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. Britton Covey is out for the game. Other than that, the Eagles are pretty clean. Johnny Wilson missed with an injury today. It's the Steelers who have some issues. We'll get into that and more right now for today's Football at 4 with Adam Caplan. Of course, we'll take a look at the scenarios and what could happen this week with wins, losses, the like. It's an important week in the NFC. Adam Caplan, how are you, friend?
Mike, I'm glad to talk to you today. Yeah, it's funny. The Eagles, last 2 weeks, they've actually released the injury report before our segment started. Not literally, how many times have we done this segment for the last 4 or 5 years? We're literally at 4 o'clock Eastern. When I come on Fridays, they release it. So, yeah, here's the good news. So, Britton Covey, look, he's okay. The way I understand it is he cannot get hit yet. He can't get contact on that neck. So, yes, he took a lot of reps this week, but he's not clear for contact, so he will not be able to play, and it'll be Cooper DeJean on punt returns again. Everyone else has been cleared. Reed Blankenship's out of the concussion protocol. That's really good. Boy, that they need him, Mike. That would have helped last week. Johnny Wilson was not feeling well. He had an illness. They expect him to play. He only blocks. That's really all he really does. But he's important to the run game. So this is good news, Mike, for the Eagles. But the Steelers, I know talking to them this week, I have some notes here, but they knew that George Pickens all week would not play because his MRI on Monday morning wasn't good. But it's going to be big Mike Williams. Mike Williams, who I'm told they actually did a sign in free agency, but he decided not to take his free agent visit there. And he wound up signing with the Jets. And then, of course, the Jets traded Mike Williams at the trade deadline.
Yeah, so the Eagles at Week 15, pretty healthy, pretty unusual to see a team this healthy this late in the year. But this late in the year, what's not unusual is games mean more. So let's look at the NFC East scenarios for Philadelphia and what's at stake against the Pittsburgh Steelers this week.
Yeah, it's funny. Jeff and I actually were joking on this one because there's always the dreaded tie. You know, if something we'll explain that one. I just hate that ties could actually, though they, as we know, it's like I got a 2% chance of happening of a team tying a game, just an overall game, and we'll explain what that means. So, first of all, the Eagles and Lions are the only two teams to clinch a playoff spot so far, and obviously they're vying for the number 1 spot. Eagles are number 2 in the NFC. The Lions are number 1. The Eagles could win the NFC East this week if they beat the Steelers and the Commanders lose to the Saints, or the Eagles tie. Yes, the Eagles tie and the Commanders lose to the Saints. Now, if the Eagles clinch the division Sunday, Mike, they'll no worse than the 3rd seed. Realistically, Mike, they're not going to be worse than the 2nd seed. I as much as I think Seattle will win the West, I can't see the Eagles losing the rest of their games and Seattle doing that. So Seattle winning out. So. Look, it's going to be fun. The Lions have a very difficult game. I know the Bills are. The Bills are. The Bills, by the way, are only 4-3 on the road, and they had a tough loss in an unbelievable game last Sunday night. Russell Douglas will not play, former Eagle. You might remember he starts at corner for the Bills, so that's going to be hard for them. But the Lions, if you look at the Lions and Eagles schedules, Mike, the Lions' schedule is way harder than the Eagles the rest of the way.
Yeah, and that's why, people are saying, it's going to be tough for the Eagles to catch them. They would obviously have to lose twice, but there are losable games, and they've won 11 in a row, Detroit has. By the way, Philly's won 9 in a row, and we were talking about this earlier. If they both, to win all the way out, Detroit would have, and they were the 1 seed, they'd have to win like 16 straight games, and Philly would have to win 17 straight games.
Which is crazy. It's funny. Covered this business 27 years, and I remember one coach telling me, I won't tell you who it is. The guy used to actually work for the Eagles. He told me this is going back 10 years ago. Actually, more than that. It was some kind of situation where the Eagles were on a long winning streak. I saw the guy after our practice. This is when we were actually. This tells you how long ago, Mike, it was. I remember it. This is when we were allowed to watch practice. This is when Andy Reid was the head coach. Just before Andy shut us down. So it was after Friday practice. I was one of the few reporters who would actually go to practice, go to the whole thing. And I see this coach walking out the field, and he goes, it wouldn't be such a bad thing if we lost this week. Because it was just one of these situations where they're on a long winning streak, and sometimes you kind of want to know what your weaknesses are or whatever the case may be, but it's just rare to hear that. But the bottom line is, Mike, you're right. Both teams are playing very good football, but I just want to go over the Lions' schedule after this week. They're at the Bears, and the Bears, you never know. They gave them a great game on Thanksgiving. Then they're at the Niners. Will the Niners even care at this point? After a terrible loss last night, Mike. I don't know if you watched that slog in the first half with the rain. I don't know why it was raining last night in Santa Clara. And then now this could be for all the marbles for the number one seed out in the division. Who knows? They host the Vikings in Week 18.
Yeah, that one's going to be a big one. Obviously, you get that from that game last night. Because the Rams won, they had put the pressure on Washington here. If you're Eagles, would you match up better with Washington or the Rams? Because that's a likely first-round opponent, 7-2.
Don't think it really matters, Mike. The Eagles have done very well against the Rams, and obviously the last bunch of times in L.A. they've done very well. I'm not counting that. The 2020 game was a COVID year when Tyler Higbee had 3 touchdowns and no fans were there. Remember, he had the cardboard cutouts. I don't think it really matters. I would rather face Jane Daniels, who they hammered, than Stafford, because Stafford could always get hot. But the Rams' defense, Mike, it's kind of a no-name defense. The Eagles are much bigger physically. I don't think it really matters, to be honest with you.
All right, these two teams played a couple of years ago, Philadelphia and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, the Steelers haven't won in Philadelphia since 1965. They were here in Week 8 a couple of years ago, 2022. Philly dominated that game, 35-13. These two teams are different, though.
Oh, completely different, Mike. So, just over 2 years ago, it was October 30th, 2022. There are only really 5 starters out of the 22 who are going to start this game. Now we got the injury report. Larry Ogunjobi is also out. Don't forget T.J. Watt did not play in that game 2 years ago. The only starters that are back, okay, the only starters who are going to start this game for Pittsburgh, Dan Moore's the left tackle, is very beatable. Najee Harris, of course. Isaiah Loudermilk is going to start for Ogunjobi. Cam Hayward, who, talking to Steelers this week, they said he's been great. Best he's played in 5 years. Alex Highsmith, who just returned a couple weeks ago from his hamstring injury, and the great Micah Fitzpatrick. And for the Eagles, there are 10 starters out of the 22 that return as starters in this game. So, Mike, a lot has changed over 2 years, which is kind of odd, but it has. And this was the A.J. Brown 3-touchdown game, let's not forget. And Joey Porter Jr. was not in that game. A lot has changed, Mike, with Pittsburgh's defense especially.
Yeah, and I remember that A.J. Brown. He caught the touchdown. That's the game where he pointed at the defensive backs. He's I burned you. I burned you. Do we anticipate that all this is behind A.J., Hurts, and the locker room, and that A.J. has a big kumbaya game on Sunday?
I don't think the little controversy from a couple weeks ago, from 3 days ago, I think it's a non-story, to be honest with you. I know it's been dealt with internally. I would tell you, knowing what I know from multiple team sources, the Nick Sirianni situation was a little bit more of an issue internally. And he handled that with his players. They had a meeting. They had his back. You know, these players really like Nick, by the way. And they love AJ. So, no, I don't think it's – look, I heard you and Josh. I thought you guys were really good to open the show today. The quarterback's got to pull the pin. I don't know what's going on with him not throwing the football. Because, as you know, 2 years ago, show me another aggressive quarterback. Show me a quarterback who's more aggressive than him, really, and then this year he's just not. But I think, Mike, I don't know if it was you or Josh brought this up before we get out of here. I want to give you a little bit of an intel. So, talking to you remember John DeFilippo, the former Eagles quarterbacks coach.
Yep.
John coached. He's coached quarterbacks who've had contract extensions. He said the first year. He's actually coached one veteran quarterback the first year of the extension, and the guy pressed. He tried to live up to the contract. So I thought that was good that you guys brought that up. That's very fair. And also going to give you another nugget that a former Eagles player told me, who's now with another team, that losing Kelsey would be a big thing for Jalen, because as much as Jalen won the responsibility this year with Kelsey retiring, it's a lot on his plate, and he could be pressing. So just want you to understand, Mike, this stuff is real. Like, we're all looking for answers. Why is Hurts struggling so much? He's a human being. I think some of the stuff you brought up, I think, is very fair, and I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, thanks. And you know, Hurts did say Wednesday, and Sirianni was asked about it today, that there are times that he sees himself holding the ball too long. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we've kind of touched on this topic a little bit, is that on the coaching staff? Do you look at Kellen Moore and say he's got to do a better job of coaching Hurts to get rid of the ball, or is that the player?
Well, you could have what are called openers. I remember Ron Jaworski telling me this. Jaws said that when he was really, really struggling with processing, whoever the play caller was would get they literally would get the ball out of his hands so quickly he'd have time to think. And this is to get the guy confident. And speaking of that, I don't think Jalen's playing confident football right now. He's just not. I know they're winning, which is great. They won 9 in a row, as you mentioned. But as a passer, which is we're talking about, not running the football as a passer, there's just something off. I don't know why he's so hesitant. But yet we pointed out on inside the tape with Greg Cosell. Greg brought up the point 2 weeks ago against Baltimore. To me, Jalen's best throw was that power throw over the middle to Brown for 17 yards. That's a Matthew Stafford anticipation throw. That's a by the way, some might call it a risk throw, but he made it. I don't know why he won't be willing to do that all the time, but he's not.
Well, that's the interesting part about this, Adam, is we've seen him make almost all the throws. We don't call into question whether he can make certain throws. It's that he's not pulling the trigger to make it.
Yeah, and I've asked Greg Cosell this. I know Greg didn't coach. I've asked Flip this. I've asked a lot of coaches this. John told me last Sunday night. John and I talked Sunday night about a bunch of things, and she said, "Hey, I know you interviewed Hurts at the Combine. I know you really liked him. What did you like about him?" And he loved his toughness, his attitude of never say die. He really bonded well with Jalen in their 15-minute meeting when John was with the Bears in 2020. But he said that basically what you have when you have a quarterback who's not pulling the trigger, it's tape study, it's Monday morning conversation, it's repping it. You don't yell, you don't scream, you just emphasize it. You keep re-emphasizing what you want, and you have communication with the quarterback. We have to mention this because it seems obvious, but we have to keep mentioning it. It's the first year of Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts. Hopefully they'll be working more together in the future. And you have to figure at some point, this offense, which we literally, Kellen got the job, and 5 minutes later, I put on Twitter that Jalen should love this offense. Talking to coaches who work with Kellen Moore, it's the quarterbacks love it. It's not hard. It's a pretty basic offense, but it's a spread offense, and things have changed here, obviously, with Barkley, and they like working out of 12 personnel. They're top 3 in 12 personnel. Bottom line is, it looked good early in the season. It has not looked good lately, and they got to keep working together, which they will.
All right, bigger game Sunday, Barkley or Brown?
Steelers' great run defense.
Yep.
You know what? Did you see what Jamar Chase did to Pittsburgh? 6 penalties for Joey Porter Jr. 5 got called, 5 stuck. That's a great question. I'm going to go with A.J. Brown. Why not?
A.J. Brown, look at it. You can listen to the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. That's Adam Caplan. This is Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Adam, thanks, buddy.
Thanks, man.